Throughout time, all kinds of tribes and subcultures used to rise and fall in Great Britain, but no one would ever imagine what it would all come to. Daniel, a young boy from Ireland, is living inside the swirls of newly emerged cultures, but he wants to be something totally different from them. He wants to be like James Bond, smooth and confident, mysterious and dangerous. Unfortunately for him, however, he's nothing like James Bond. He's a 19-year-old virgin with terrible anxiety problems, particularly with girls whom he likes. As a cherry on top, he's dealing with a stuttering issue too. It's no wonder why girls keep waving him away. Resuming the introductions, Daniel has a younger sister, Maeve, who's an honorable member of the contemporary subculture. She's quite kind and attentive toward his struggling brother, and she has a purpose to give him a hand in his troubles. The same, however, cannot be said about Daniel's older brother. Rory likes himself more than anything or anyone. If he were given a chance to turn into something that he likes, he would most likely choose to be a mirror. Last but not least is the mother, Kathleen Buckley. She's not so great with neighborhood disputes, especially when it comes to one neighbor in particular, Faye. This latter switch boyfriends like iPhones. Oh, and in regards to the father, one beautiful day Kathleen allegedly got into politics, so the man disappeared. Our story begins when the young boy heads out to have his first job interview. As a matter of fact, he's been interviewed to become a ship inspector, the profession that his father used to follow. Standing at a bus stop, he is joined by his mother, so he has company on the way to the office. Thanks to this fact, the bus ride is much less anxious and much more awkward, but unfortunately for Danny, the interview is both anxious and awkward. His stuttering goes over the top when he tries to point out what makes a good ship inspector. The three mysterious-looking interviewers show quite a bit of patience, but when Daniel takes out earphones to soothe his anxiety, he most likely lowers his chances of becoming a ship inspector. At nightfall, Daniel goes to make an appointment with a speech-language pathologist, where he meets with a very interesting person named Donna. Donna is a young girl around his age, and she was just dumped by her boyfriend. Annoyed and grief-stricken, she cries that her life is over, that the canon even of her life has just happened, but her expressions and her eyes smuggle the truth that she's not so brought down in reality. Their first meeting is quite funny and pleasant. The handshake goes on forever, just like the wide smile on Danny's face. Other than this smile, he actually manages to be somewhat like James Bond this time. He must be so proud of himself. Later that afternoon, the stuttering James Bond goes to a party where his brother performs a gig. Confident in himself, this time he manages to bubble up some interest in one girl named Carla. He does this mainly by presenting his humor and courage. When the gig is over, he even brings Carla over to meet Rory. Perhaps he even thinks that this will raise his chances with her. But the brother acts as empty-headedly as always. His personality is kind of like the door of his backstage room, overwritten with a mishmash of all kinds of nastiness, both goofy and graphic. In the end, when the duo comes outside, Daniel steps up and asks her for her number. Everything has been going on pretty well before this, but since the stuttering sets in, the girl says that she doesn't have a phone. Just before she rides away, Daniel notices that her bag isn't properly attached to the back of her motorcycle. Desperate to save it, he stumbles as the vehicle rides away and ends up on the ground. His hand is hurt, and the girl feels responsible for helping him. The cheekiness of our main character shows itself for the first time in this moment. Daniel asks her if she's got any bandages at her place. His motives are awfully apparent now, but the girl has no other choice other than to just say yes. Perhaps she even likes Daniel's forthcoming attitude too. When his hand is properly bandaged, Carla prepares to go to bed, but tells him in advance that nothing is going to happen tonight. Skinny, stuttering Danny boy isn't really her type, but the boy actually manages to make her laugh a couple of times in this moment. His humor and wits must be alluring to Carla, so much so that she might even reconsider her standards. A second date will surely take place between them, and the boy is thrilled to have finally managed something with a girl. Satisfied with himself, he's pleasantly surprised to find out he's not so lousy at all. The next morning, after the most unusual session of speech therapy, Daniel comes home for dinner and spectates as his family becomes a tiny bit more weird. This time, Rory has chosen to change his lifestyle, just like he has changed his hairstyle. That is, extremely dramatically. He will quit the civil service and commit himself fully to his band. This means that no one other than Daniel will earn money around the house. The young boy himself doesn't object to this at all, but Kathleen doesn't share his generosity. Soon, to make everything even worse, a disagreement bubbles up about the father of the house. Everybody other than Rory believes that the man will eventually come back and explain everything, and this dissonance creates a great deal of tension among the family members. The fight ends as expected, unusually and weirdly. Daniel spills juice all over demonstratively, and Rory storms outside with a plate full of food and no hat to cover his new wig. Being a good brother, Daniel finds him in the street afterward, but receives nothing other than resentment and bitterness back from him. Standing beside his big brother, he holds on until the unfairness of Rory's insults gets a good grip on his heart too. Feeling an increasing amount of poison inside his mind, he submits to the urge to let it all out. He manages to land a good blow thanks to his witty way with words, and receives a long stare down. He loses here, of course. The sight of his dominant big brother is too hard for him to handle. The punch is difficult to take too, but Daniel has no other choice but to endure it. Still, life is good for the young man. He's got Carla, and the picture of their second date is all he needs for happiness. This attitude of his is, of course, very soon picked up by Maeve. Catching a glimpse of love in his brother's eyes, she lashes at him until the young man surrenders the truth. Maeve is quite satisfied with the news, but as always, she feels an urge to say something upsetting. Unfortunately for Danny, Maeve comes up with an absolute top-rank explosive. She says that Carla's name rhymes with car wash. Before the siblings can talk more about it, Kathleen dashes inside the room with huge news. As it turns out, the mysterious HR representatives have decided to receive Danny with open arms. The position of the ship inspector is already his. Everything in his life is going well. Both his personal life and career are seeing great advancement. In the next scene, the newly appointed ship inspector meets his new driver, Charles Sheridan. Danny knows this person after his night's adventure with Carla. Charles was having his own adventure then. The car ride is as terrible as it gets. Struggling its way across a rocky surface, it goes up and down like a piece of raggedy cardboard box in the wind until the boy feels sick before his first day at work. Walking as if he had just been stabbed in the stomach, Danny walks inside the building and ascends the stairs like an 80-year-old granny. As is immediately pointed out to him in the office, he will need a lot of balls for this job, but the young boy has no idea that the first day at work is not going to be the hardest thing he will have to face today. Later that evening, he enters a bus to go to Carla's apartment. Exhausted out of his mind and soul, he is so lost in thoughts of the upcoming date that he pays with a condom instead of money. The fare-collecting lady doesn't take it as a compliment, of course. Unfortunately for the young man, however, this isn't the last inconvenience of the day. Standing in the doorway in front of Carla, he sees two men in her apartment. Disappointment hits instantly, but it is soon explained to him that these people are only her clients and nothing more. As it turns out, Carla designs costumes for musicians. She seems to have forgotten the date, so she's sadly occupied with work. Here it soon becomes apparent that Carla isn't so enthusiastic about setting another date, but Daniel is so persistent that she finally decides to go with it anyway. What does she have to lose? In the next scene, a very important protest takes place outside the Buckleys' house. Naturally, it is aimed at their annoying neighbors. Once the protest is successfully carried out, the two siblings start talking about Carla and the chances Danny has with her. Before this matter can be fully discussed, however, the subject of their father creeps into the conversation, like an odd subject. As Maeve says, she heard Dad speak over the phone with somebody just before he left. He was whispering unusually, and he hid the phone immediately after Kathleen approached him. All of this assures Maeve that their father has found someone else, a new family to live with. Naturally, Daniel doesn't want to believe this. The arguments are quite convincing, but the image of his father is too important for the young man. Enough about the father now. He knows what to do about Carla. He needs to take care of his stuttering issue and get a car. That will surely get her to go out with him. Luckily for Daniel, one of these challenges was taken care of the next day. As it turns out, Donna is currently selling a car. She's even willing to give Daniel some driving lessons. All of this is wonderful, but the young man has bigger issues to tackle. In the next scene, he asks his boss about his father. He wants to know if he mentioned anything about another woman with his friends. The boss averts his eyes immediately after hearing this question. Instead of answering, he chooses to just wander away, whistling as if he were walking in a peaceful meadow. What a way to satisfy another man's curiosity. The tone of the song changes then. County council elections are coming up, and as Kathleen announces in the next scene, she has been elected as a candidate of Fianna Fáil, a conservative liberal and Christian Democratic Party. Moving forward, she will need some support from her family. The campaign starts out well, and it shows great promise, especially when Kathleen's biggest opponent is promising to bring back crack. There is still, however, one problem Daniel wants to take care of. Charlie and his growing interest in Kathleen. Laxative chocolate will take care of this problem. As the driving lessons continue, the date finally comes. It all goes perfectly, but then the time comes to go to bed. This is when Danny Boy shows a little inconsistency and a lot of rushing. Carla doesn't seem so satisfied. Danny Boy rushes his way through the driving lesson the next day as well. Maeve is annoyed out of her mind by his reckless driving. But as Donna says, he is doing great. He just needs to learn a thing or two about taking it slow. The marks of his new relationship soon appear on Danny's neck, so naturally, the mother finds out soon enough. Unfortunately, it happens at a very inconvenient time, when she is promoting herself around the neighborhood with the help of a speaker. Now everybody knows about the fact that he is having sex with Carla. The people of this neighborhood also learn here that the girl is invited over for dinner. It will definitely be a hell of a time. In the next scene, Donna hears about this as well, and for the first time, we get a glimpse into what is really going on inside her heart. She is clearly in love with Daniel, and the thought of another girl being introduced to his mother as his girlfriend is clearly hurtful for her. There is nothing she can do about it though. All she can do is give him some cooking advice. In the next scene, as Kathleen makes serious faces and growls and frowns at Carla, the siblings are inside the kitchen. Both have their own issues to take care of. Maeve wants to go to a disco, and she needs Daniel to speak to Kathleen about it, while the young man has the most difficult dinner of his entire life to go through. The fact that he doesn't help Maeve makes it even harder. Maeve's unhelpful remarks thrown across the table, however, are nothing compared to how Kathleen behaves during the dinner. Clearly, the fact that his husband has left her has created an enormous hole in her heart. The fear of another important person leaving her must be so poisonous and painful for the woman that her alarm system is turned on at the slightest possibility of Daniel leaving the house. This is why, in place of Carla, Kathleen sees herself as a thief who is about to steal away her child. Her monologue is cruel and insulting. The engines of her trauma are revving so irresistibly that she almost turns into Heisenberg, asking Carla to say her name properly. Naturally, the dinner ends like the lowest moment in a Dostoevsky novel, darkly and with a zero glimpse of distant hope. The family breaks up, and the thing that Kathleen fears the most happens. Her son packs his bags to leave. Maeve is angry at her brother as well. His leaving is much worse than his not trying to convince Kathleen to let her go to a disco. To add to everything, Kathleen loses the elections the next morning. Surprisingly enough, Shamey the Crack McIntyre wins the race. He will surely turn this neighborhood into a paradise. That evening, as Kathleen finds out about Daniel's leaving, the young man himself finds out something even more hurtful. Getting inside the girl's apartment, he finds 2 glasses of wine and 2 plates full of spaghetti on the table. At first, he is pleasantly surprised that Carla is so thoughtful, but very soon he finds something else. As it turns out, the dishes aren't meant for him. They are meant for his brother, Rory. The pain is abrupt and irresistible. The young boy fights recklessly, but to no avail. Failing to nudge his older brother, Danny Boy keeps dashing towards him with velocity, but he ends up on the ground every time. Humiliation is painted on his face when Rory finally heads back inside. He never truly loved Carla, so maybe now he will finally stop going after her. As a cherry on top, he finds his room completely destroyed when he gets back home in the next scene. Kathleen is calm now. The rage is out of her, and furthermore, her child is back home, so there is nothing to worry about anymore. Naturally, Daniel doesn't think the same. He wants this to never happen again. He wants his mother to stop being so egocentric. He wants to matter, and he demands more kind care. In the next scene, as the conflict inside the family is at its peak, something very important is unveiled. The police come to the Buckleys' door and tell Kathleen that there is something difficult he has to convey. As it turns out, her husband's car was found in the river nearby. This, of course, means that the reason behind the disappearance of Daniel's father is his sudden death, and not some other family member. Relief and grief hit the family at once. Painful as it is, however, this news promises something great. It can bring the Buckleys together. The first signs of this are shown later that evening when Daniel brings some soup to his sister. Maeve and his relationship seem to be getting back on track. The next day, Daniel finds out that his speech pathologist has run away with Faye, his neighbor. This is not so terrible, since Danny wanted to quit anyway. It's still good that he came here. Speaking with Donna, he points out that he wasn't meant to be with Carla. When the two decide to go for another driving lesson, we realize that it is not going to be an ordinary lesson. It is going to be a date. As expected, it all goes extremely well. So well that Donna invites him to his place and cooks for him. After tasting the best dish he has ever tasted, Daniel finds himself in bed with someone he truly cares about. But unfortunately enough, the attempt to be intimate ends up being unsuccessful for the young man. Failing to perform, he rolls away and becomes distant until he stands up to leave. Donna was left before, so naturally, she gets mad at him for this unhelpful defense mechanism. Sadly enough, Daniel still fails to resist the urge to run away from the embarrassment and shame. Now it will be extremely difficult to make it up to Donna, but he will still have to try. Maeve has some ideas about it. He should appear in front of her place with full makeup on and show her his dance moves. This will definitely work. When the performance happens, Donna comes out, and surprisingly enough, she dances her anger away as well. In the meantime, she manages to find some good blows to his face as well. Even though Donna dances with him, however, she still shows no signs of reconciliation. She is still very mad. In the next scene, Maeve has a better idea. Her brother should show his genuine regret with the help of some subtle gesture. Being a good cook, Daniel makes a cake and brings it over to Donna's place. This time, the girl surrenders a smile. The boy is finally let in. Of course, this is the best time in his life for another great story to be smashed on his table. In the next scene, Daniel's boss hands him an envelope and tells him that his father is alive. His current address will be found inside the envelope. Surprisingly enough, this news doesn't destroy the lives of Maeve and Daniel at all. Both would have preferred if it were never revealed to them, but now that they know it, they are just mildly dissatisfied. Speaking of mild dissatisfaction, Rory and Carla appear in front of them when they are discussing this. There is no flicker of fire going off inside Daniel's heart after seeing the girl he thought he loved. He doesn't seem to care about Rory's insults either. In short, all is well. Speaking of going well, Daniel and Donna's relationship will go to another level soon. He will no longer care about the small, bitter problems he used to care about. He is going on a holiday with his girlfriend. The real girlfriend this time.